Hello everybody, this is Monika and Jan Zans. We are live at Motivational Mondays. Today's conversation is all about expectations and disagreements, letting them go so that you can feel free and you can feel that you make powerful agreements. So we're going to get started here in just 1 second with Jan. Welcome, welcome. If you are new to Periscope, welcome. Go ahead and say new. Hey, Alan, if you'd like to invite your followers, go ahead and swipe to the right and you on an iPhone so you can invite your followers. This will be an interesting conversation, diving deep into how do you let go of disappointment and expectation. Awesome, everybody. All right. Aloha. Hi, Nahaku. How are you? Hello from Hawaii.
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
So we're trying a couple different things new today. Welcome. So hi, everybody. My name is Jan Zans. Hello, everybody. Jan Zans.
Hey, Jan. Woo! Hey. Hello, virtual world. Hello, everybody on Zoom.
And I'm proudly wearing my UCLA hat, even though our sports weekend was not so desirable.
An undesirable sports weekend.
I'm also proudly wearing my Herbalife Nutrition shirt because my results have been desirable.
Yeah!
It's nice. Living a healthy life. So we're here at the Motor Nutrition Club, and basically it's a community of people who are committed to living healthy lives. And I'd like to add living healthy lives that they love. And so what we like to talk about is, they talk about all sorts of different things here. They talk about fitness, they talk about nutrition, and one of the things—
And a healthy mindset.
And a healthy mindset.
Because our mind matters when we're dealing with everything in our life. When we're trying to lose weight, when we're trying to be healthy, when we're trying to deepen our relationships, when we're trying to grow, when we're doing anything in life interactive, a lot of the root of it is our relationships.
Absolutely. So quite often what we do is we come here and we've already worked out a full presentation and a process that we're going to go through, and we have like a complete structure. And we were on the beach at our Fit Club on the Beach workout. If you'll know more, just reach out. Our Fit Club on the Beach workout. And we were talking about what are things that people often struggle with. And a lot of people feel a lot of disappointment in life. And the disappointment often comes from they think that they have an agreement with someone. They said, hey, I'm going to meet you at the gym and we're going to work out together, and the person doesn't come. Or, hey, let's meet for dinner and I'll meet you at 7 o'clock, and the person shows up at 7:30. And these little disappointments that we experience through life, and they may seem little and they may seem like not such a big deal.
Well, and if there's only one or two of them, they are little. We can manage them. We can justify them. We can write them off. But it's when they aren't just one or two that they become not so little anymore.
They accumulate, definitely. And so we created an intention for today's conversation, which is how to experience life with less disappointment. Or maybe being able to be so transformed that you're not experiencing disappointment. So that's really what we wanted to do. And what we decided was there's a couple of questions that we're excited to explore. And it's I have my opinion about it, and Monika has some of her opinions about it. And so we're going to each share our own thoughts and our own opinions about it and kind of dive in, and we'll see where we come at the end of the conversation. So today's really like a workshop. We're all going to be interacting together. So let me just mute everybody. So that'll take 1 second.
Welcome those of you who have just joined Periscope. We see Ecuador. We see people from all over the country. Welcome. Glad that you're here. People from Philadelphia. Hey, Alan. How you doing? Hey, Leah. How you doing? Great to see you. So we're talking about expectation and life about disappointments, and how there are these little things that happen in our life, and sometimes the more and more and more these little things happen, the more we realize that we're mired inside of expectations, that they rule us, they run our mind, and they run our relationships. So as a business consultant, as a life coach, a lot of what I'm spending time doing with people is unraveling and uncollapsing the conversations that have been piled one on top of another of the disappointments that were never communicated or worked out internally, which is where the source of our healing is, and externally with the people who have been the culprits of the disappointment from our view. Because typically we're looking outward, like you did this to me, I was the one on time. But Did you create a container for them to show up on time? Did you consider their experience as they made the commitment? Did you check in with the commitment that they made, or do you just take it at their face value? So there's things that we are totally irresponsible about, and then we hold them responsible for it.
Yeah. So let's start with the first one is expectations versus agreements. Okay? Because this is a really, really powerful concept, because human beings are horrible at communicating. We really are. And sometimes. But we're getting better.
Untrained.
There you go. Yes, that was a big generalization. But there's so many expectations. So when you go into a restaurant and you order some food, and you assume that they're going to know exactly what you want. Or, if you're working with, let's say I remember in my past, I was an assistant, and my boss might say, hey, can you schedule lunch with this person? And I would do that. And so while I'm talking, you're going to be in charge of reading if something comes up. Okay. Okay.
Expectations versus agreement.
Okay, good. Thank you. So basically, it would be like, here, an example from our life.
Okay.
It would be, hey, Jan, can you pick up our daughter from school? And let's say I don't, we're right next to each other. We go, hey, can you pick up your daughter from school? And I go, okay, great. And I don't necessarily repeat back to her what I said. Now we've got 2 daughters, right?
2 different times at school to be picked up.
And how did I know that she meant today? So there's no clarification.
And I want to go back to the restaurant. So you go to a restaurant, a server comes to you. Now, a server, do they know your allergies? Do they know your palate? Do they know your concerns? Do they know what you really like? Do they know what you don't like? And then you go ahead and you ask a server, what's the best thing on the menu? Well, my favorite thing is, but did you ask them 10 qualifying questions? Well, do you like salty or sweet? How much do you eat at gourmet restaurants? What was your training? How do you know? What is the basis upon which, did the boss at the restaurant tell you that this is the dish that you should be pawning off because it's the most expensive one on the menu? Like, what is it that qualifies them being able to tell you what is going to make you happy? And then 9 times out of 10, they may be accurate because they said, that's the most popular thing on the menu. It's what most people come here to order. And now there's a little bit more information. There's a little bit more of a relationship. But if we don't get good at clarifying what we're really asking, what we really want, then we're going to get a whole lot of things that nobody knows how to actually deliver. We'll engage in relationships where people deliver us what they like, hoping that we like it too.
Yeah, so that's a really important point, is people often, I'm not going to make another huge generalization.
It's okay if you do, I like it.
Okay, people often think that everyone thinks the way that they think. So people
or taste the way they taste, or see the way that they see, or hear the way that they hear, or have had the same upbringing as they had.
Yeah. So it's just a generalization that people make. Like, if we're going to go and we're going to order something, or we're going to do something, I'm going to assume that the majority of the people like the same thing I do. Like, most people are going to like the movies that I like, and most people are going to like the TV shows that I like. So that was kind of tangential. But just so you know, that's one way. We always, in the past, we've talked about your way is not the only way. And then once you realize that your way is not the only way, it's the same thing. Not everyone is experiencing life the same way you're experiencing life. This is leading my brain in another thing. Can I give another general rule of life?
Sure, give a general rule of life. Here we go, people. Get ready.
So
this is his general rule, not yours.
Pearl from Jan.
Yeah,
this is his general rule, not yours.
This is a
wait, let me say it one more time. This is his general rule, not yours.
Okay.
So your work is to consider, if it's his, is it mine too, or is any part of it similar for me too?
Yes. There you go.
Okay, that's one of the keys to letting go of disappointment and expectation. When someone speaks with you, or at you, or about you, do you agree or not? Their truth isn't your truth until you decide it's your truth too. Go ahead. What's this big generalization?
That's right.
Is that true?
You get to choose. So the general rule is that people are doing the best that they can. Okay? So that's the first one, is that people are doing the best that they can. And here's the second one. The choices that they're making make perfect sense to them. How many times have you observed someone made a choice and you said, what were they thinking? Like, that makes no sense at all, right?
By the way, everybody just raised their hands.
Okay. And so, but people don't do things generally that don't seem logical and make sense to them. Now, there's a whole nother conversation of people sabotaging themselves and making choices that aren't actually serving them. But that's a whole different realm, because subconsciously it is making sense for them. But at the end of the day, in terms of the realm of being disappointed with people, I generally assume that people are doing the best that they can and their choices are making sense for them.
Well, what if, let's phrase it instead of a I do it, what if you entered life and you knew beyond the shadow of a doubt that everybody was making their very best choices with what the tools, resources, and thought processes that they had in the moment, and that their lens was what was best for them, not what's not good for you. So we take it, if we don't like how people engage with us, as it's what they're doing to us. But that's not their come from. That's not the way they look at it. They're doing what's best for them. Now, what's best for them may include, in their perception, you. They may think that the best thing they're doing right now helps you too. But unless they check in with you, unless you confirm it, then it's still only in the realm of what's best for them. Now, we judge, we evaluate based on, is it best for us? Not, awesome, good job, Crystal, that was really best for you. It was, well, that was really awesome for you, but how did it impact me in a great way? Did it work for me? Did I like it? Do I approve of what you did for you? As opposed to, wow, tell me all the ways that worked for you. Show me how that worked so well for you, because that would not have been the way that I chose to do it or the way that I would have processed it. So awesome, share with me so that I can learn a new perspective, potential new flexibility. But it's not typically how we enter the world or enter the conversation.
Great. So we started going down the path of powerful agreements. And we're going to explore that. That's going to come back up. But that's an important point that we're going to go to, which is, in life, you're a more powerful communicator, or communication is often more successful when you have agreements versus expectations. Okay?
Yep.
So let's go back to disappointments. So let's say that Monika and I, we're scheduled to be here and talking at noon, right? Motivational Monday starts at noon. And so I say, Monika, make sure that you're here at 11:30, so that way we can review all the notes that we discussed, we can prepare, we can put the seats down, and you're gonna be here at 11:30, I'm gonna be here at 11:30, and we're gonna now be able to really be on point with Motivational Monday. And she gets here at 11:55. I'm disappointed. I'm annoyed, I'm frustrated, I'm lots of things. So the question is, does that happen to people in life? Does that resonate with you? Like, there's some type of parallel for you. So then the question is, how can I experience that in a way where I'm not upset with her? Because she's cute, I don't want to be upset with her. So how can I do that? So what would you say is the first step that I can do in order to not be upset with you?
Okay, well, Jan and I were discussing this in the other room, and we weren't necessarily looking at it from the same lens. So in our discussion, he kept trying to have me hear what it is that he meant for me to get to answer that question. And I said, well, there's a deeper question. So if I answer that question, I'm not actually expressing what I think is the cause. So there's two things. There's the question he asked me and how I heard it, and the question he asked and the way he intended it. The question he asked and the way he intends it, and the question he asked and the way I heard it. Okay? So when I hear him ask the question, how do I avoid being upset with you or disappointed when you came late? And the question that I ask then is, well, it's not about you not being disappointed because of the way that I showed up. It's about, what kind of relationship do you want to have with me in the first place? Who am I to you, and what's the depth of the relationship you want to have? Because if I show up late and he wants a relationship with me where I'm punctual and I show up late every time, do you think that's going to create connection? No, every time he's going to be disappointed and I'm going to feel fine because I showed up how I wanted to show up and he didn't have me show up how he needed me to show up to feel fine. So if I look at it from the point of the creation of the relationship, have you ever had friends in your life or acquaintances in your life where if they showed up late or not, you still did whatever you did and it didn't stop you? And in fact, you didn't even wait for them because there was nothing at stake. It was like, look, you came late and I went. Versus other people who are in your life who may be a little bit more important or who may give you living hell if you don't wait for them and you'll never hear the end of it. And you're like, I waited for you, I was late, and now we're gonna be late and now it's gonna look bad and now I look bad because of you. And I don't even wanna say that to you because now you're gonna give me the third degree about that. So to me, the answer to the question, I can't just answer the question the way it was asked. I need to ask him, well, what is it that's so important to you about me showing up at 11:30 versus 11:55? So that maybe I can understand what his come from is. Why is that important to him if I want to have a deep relationship with him?
Okay, so do I need to check in? We're all good? Okay, so going back to my question, and this is kind of like, you guys, by the way, should all rent He Said, She Said with Kevin Bacon and Elizabeth something. Old movie, Kevin Bacon, same story told from his perspective, and then they tell the whole story again from her perspective. It's great. He Said, She Said.
Very different movies.
Okay, so I just want to know, like, because have you guys ever heard people say, in order to not have disappointments, just don't have expectations? So that's kind of what. So I hear that, and I go,
you can't.
well, that's what I'm wondering. Like, okay, so should I go through life expecting nothing from anybody? Is that how I don't like I go into a restaurant and I order brown rice, chicken, and arugula, and I get fried mac and cheese? Okay, I'm not disappointed because I shouldn't have that expectation. Mac and cheese, that sounds good. So I'm going to be disappointed. So should I be disappointed about that?
Well, what do you think? Should someone be disappointed?
Yes.
Why should someone be disappointed?
It's on the menu. You pointed to it. The server wrote it down.
Wrong.
Wrong?
No, the server wrote it down wrong.
So
they were distracted.
So let's say I'm extraordinarily transformed, and I say, hey, obviously this is not what I ordered. Can you please return with what I ordered? And they go and they do it again, and it's still not right. And then they go and they do it again, and they brought it right. But now I'm someone who has a schedule. I only have 2 minutes to eat. I'm super rushed, and now I'm late to my next meeting. And I'm upset. Does this do these types of scenarios come up?
Oh, yeah.
Hourly?
Hourly.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Solve it.
First of all, make life better.
Yeah.
Monika, so the first thing is to consider when you're inside of the moment and you have certain parameters. So if he has a time restriction, who needs to know that? The server.
Okay, agreement. There we go. Powerful agreement.
Otherwise, how can he expect the server to know that he's in a rush and has a certain amount of time, and if you do it wrong 3 times, I'm going to have 2 minutes to eat?
Yep.
So immediately assumption, right? Again, assumption. Maybe that server, it's their first time and they don't actually speak English. It's their first time working and they don't actually speak English. So they're trying to interpret it and write down what they think you're pointing at the menu, and they get it wrong.
We went to an Italian restaurant over there, and the person only spoke Italian.
Right. It happened. You had that experience. But the bottom line is, when you are inside of relationships, there are certain contexts or places from which you can have an expectation. Did it end?
Yeah, you got a phone call.
I need to turn on. Okay, great.
How do you do that?
You have to turn on and don't disturb. No disturbing.
Oh, that's disappointing.
That's awesome. Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you for enjoying that.
So when Jan is inside of a scenario and there are certain parameters he needs to have handled, he can't assume that the person knows the parameters ahead of time.
Yeah.
Now, the restaurant example is a difficult example in my opinion because you're counting on a lot of X factors. If you've been to the restaurant multiple times, then maybe they know you and maybe they know what you order. If you've never been there, you don't know the service, you don't know the speed, you don't know so many factors. So if you want to be prepared, could you go to the front desk and say, typically, on average, how long does it take for food to be served after you order it? Because if it's a slow restaurant, you may not be able to go to that restaurant. So expectations are wound up inside of a lot of different layers of relationship. The relationship to the restaurant, the relationship to the server, the relationship to the request, the relationship to the preparation in the back of the kitchen, the relationship to them understanding when you ask for something, that's what you expect to get. Like that's an assumption. You assume they're going to do that. You know, can you imagine going into a restaurant and they're like, you look like the mac and cheese kind of guy, here you go. Like it's an intuitive-based restaurant. And you go just for the experience.
An intuitive-based restaurant.
Right? You go for the experience.
Ronnie likes that, right? Well, so, all right, can I pause you? You ready? Are you paused? Okay.
Kind of mid-sentence.
Okay, go.
Okay. So the truth of the matter is, it's not logical, it's not rational, it's not reasonable to always be in that level of fine detail at a restaurant. So I think a restaurant is a difficult place. And I think we do tend to make a little bit of an assumption when we go to the restaurant and we order off the menu, we will receive what's on the menu. Now, the quality of what is delivered based on our expectations of what we want, that also is another place where we could be disappointed. So to answer the question specifically, if you want to win, then you need to powerfully set up the environment and the circumstances to help you win. That means in certain circumstances, you either need to go in without expectation, without thinking that exactly the way you want it is exactly as it's going to be delivered, unless you qualify the restaurant and say, the first time I go into this restaurant, they can fail. They can do whatever they want to do, because I know that I'm teaching them my standards. But the second time I go to the restaurant, I'm going to let them know what I'm expecting. Like you could really create that relationship. And have you ever frequented a restaurant that you love and you keep going and going and going and know exactly what you want? And they know exactly how to prepare it and they can prepare it for you when they saw you walk in the door? Yeah. So over time, it's a learnable experience. So one of the keys to letting go of expectation and disappointment is teaching people what they need to know to deliver you what you need, and teaching yourself what you need to communicate so that people can deliver that.
Yeah. So that's that. There you go. Great. So I actually just wrote that down. So let me finish that thought and then yes. So for the restaurant, you could see it would be valuable to go into the restaurant and say, hey, I have 1 hour. Will that be enough time for you to get my order right and be able to, then eat and leave? So creating a powerful agreement rather than an assumption, okay, and an expectation. So that's the first thing, right? So you just clarified that.
Yes.
And I can set it up powerfully with you as well. Monika, I'm not comfortable coming out here unless we've had our time to discuss and prep and have the chairs go out. So it's really important to me in creating that agreement. Will you be there? Great. And by the way, if I really want to support my agreement, it would be like, and I'm going to come pick you up. Will you be ready? Okay. So that's like, you can really create.
Not will you.
Yes.
And I expect you, or
yes.
Can you agree to be ready?
Right. So you can,
because then I could say no, because I don't want to live in that side of that I experience that as pressure. So no, I don't want that.
But the point is that you're able to.
Which is not how it is for us.
Yeah. The point is that you're able to really create deep agreements in order to, how important it is to you is really the level that you want to support yourself with the agreements around the situation. A restaurant is more difficult than that. Now I want to just finish one last thought and then we'll go to Ronnie, which may be different because I'm going to take one step forward. When I go to the restaurant and they don't bring me the right thing and then I'm late to my meeting, I'm typically not mad at them. I'm mad at myself because why did I choose to go to this restaurant before the meeting and I really set myself up to fail? Even though they should have had it done in time, I'm mad at myself. So there's a judgment against myself about the choices that I'm making. When she's here late, then I have a judgment against her. Like, aren't I important enough? Isn't Motivational Monday important enough? Isn't the fact that you guys are all here important enough that you should be here on time? So there's a judgment against her. So
Right.
at the core of it is a judgment.
But underneath, what he may not know is, well, I'm actually have massive stage fright. And so it takes everything inside of me to come and get ready to sit in front of people. And so the reason that I show up late is not because I don't listen to him and I don't care and I don't want to show up, but it took I was ready at 11:30, but it took everything that I had to work through my own psychology to be in the seat by 11:55.
So that's having more information to understand the judgment, but you get that there's a judgment there. So part of the disappointment is linked to a judgment, which we'll go to in a second. First, we're going to go to Ronnie.
I just wanted to say, for me, I do my best not to have disappointments by lowering my expectations for people that I don't have relationships with, like Uber. And, well, they say 3 minutes and I'm there 10 minutes still and wondering where I'm there. So I don't have the same expectations and disappointment for people like that, as opposed to, let's say, people that I'm close with in my life. And if I know, let's say for the sake of argument, that I know that a particular person is always going to be late, then I'm not disappointed when they're late because I expected them to be late already. And I sort of programmed them, because I think we go through life with expecting one thing after another thing after another. You expect things from your children, you expect things from your spouse, from your employer. You just have to put it at different levels. There are some people that, like, when a waiter brings me the wrong thing, and it actually happened to me last night, I wasn't disappointed because I could tell by the way he took the order that there could be the chance that he just wouldn't get it right. And when he brought it the way I didn't expect it, I asked for this on the side. Oh, and he took it back. But I wasn't disappointed because I had the expectation that he might mess up anyways. But, some people, like when it comes to, let's say, expertise in Herbalife, I mean, when I listen to you guys, when I listen to Heather, I mean, you people, you know your stuff. Well, if there's somebody new walking in the room and has an opinion in general about network marketing, maybe they don't understand Herbalife. It's not the same. It's its own, has its own standards and its own beliefs. So different expectations for different people.
Got it. Great. And that serves you.
Right.
So I want to bring up one more concept.
And it serves him. It's specific to Ronnie and his experience. Because in my world, I wouldn't lower my expectations for people because I am a coach about people stepping into their greatness. So do you think that a person who's always making people wait, not literally, but I'm putting it in quotes, like always late, is happy about always being late? If you interview 10 people who are consistently late, some people will have just said, that's just who I am, and they'll write it off to, that's the best I do. Some people are like, I want this to change, but I don't know the root of what's causing it, so I don't even know where to start to change it. And some people are like, I'm doing everything in my world to change it, and it just isn't changing. And they feel victim to the experience. So depending on your frame of reference for your life, that might dictate how you then have the relationship to expectations in the first place. I would rather create a powerful agreement and not count on people that I'm uber punctual. So I would rather not count on people that aren't. And I know that I'm not going to adjust my standard so they can be less of a standard. I'm going to give them opportunities to rise when it won't impact my life. And when it will impact my life, they won't have that opportunity with me. And it's not because they're bad or I'm judging them. It's because I won't put myself into that position where they get to win. Because then they feel guilty. And I don't want to perpetuate their feeling of internal self-criticism and guilt. because they let themselves and me down. It's bad enough that they walk around the world letting themselves down. I don't want to be one more person reminding them they've let someone else down. And that takes very clear boundaries, very clear awareness of what are your standards and what are theirs, and do they match or are they unequal? And if they're unequal standards, then what's the action I'm going to take to inspire, promote, and create the greatness that's in them? Whereas in Ronnie's case, it's like, it's not worth it for me. I don't want to make them feel bad or wrong. So I will lower my expectations. Nothing wrong with it. Just a different approach to how you live your life and what your value system is.
So I want to bring up one other thing, maybe 1.2. So one or two other things. And then I really want to check in with you guys and hear like what you're getting out of this, like what thoughts and memories it's triggering. And then also, then we're going to complete by having you guys think of your own potential, your own situations that have created disappointments around expectations. And then maybe we'll kind of bust through them and kind of review them and look at them through a different way.
Great.
And then some action steps, because we always end with action steps and pay it forward. So that was the project manager in me, just outlining what we're moving forward with. That's how my brain works. Okay, so there's a whole nother part, which is, so let's say that I'm really excited to take you to a restaurant, and it's like the best sushi restaurant. Yes, come on in. So we're
perfect timing.
Yes, perfect timing. So we're super excited to take her to this restaurant because it's the best sushi restaurant, and I love sushi and she loves albacore, and we just can't wait. And she's late. And then because we're late, they can't seat us anymore, and now we can't go to that restaurant. So I'm really disappointed. And I have judgments about it because I was really excited, and I have judgments about her and how my feelings and all that. But the key is I was attached to the outcome. I was attached to the result of what the meal was going to be.
Well, not just his own. Not like I'm going to get to have this incredible albacore tataki. Also, I'm going to look good. I'm going to make her happy with me. I'm going to give her what I think she wants. I'm going to, but it's all I'm going to.
Yeah, so you might be, maybe you're a salesperson, and you're going in and you're talking to 10 people who have like shared, I'm really excited to buy exactly what you're selling. And you go in there and you do this amazing presentation, and they go, that's really, really great, but we're going to pass. Now you're really disappointed. That's a disappointment. And that disappointment usually comes to or from an attachment to an expected or desired outcome.
So one of the things that's an important thing to do when you do set up any of your goals is that you write down the list of things you would expect to come out of it. What do you want out of it? And then you start asking yourself, is this a reasonable expectation? And how do I prepare the person, the circumstance to be able to deliver on my expectation? Or how do I adjust my expectation because it's not a reasonable expectation, but by listing it, all of a sudden you're able to see it.
I haven't seen Blaine need a banana. That's a lot of sugar for Blaine. It usually doesn't go that way.
Okay. After a workout, make sure you get some simple sugar.
Okay, that's what caught my attention.
Okay, you didn't expect that.
No, it's usually like straight protein. So, okay. So we brought up like a bunch of stuff that's kind of floating around, right? So there's disappointment, and related to that is attachment, and relating to that is expectation. And a way to prevent it would be agreements versus assumption. So it's like, we're kind of like, that's like all the elements of the conversation. So with all of like the parts in the play now introduced, I'd love to hear from you guys. We would love to hear from you guys. So what are some of the things that are coming forward out of this conversation? Is there any insights that you're having? Is there like a memory that you're thinking about and how you expected? Okay, come on up.
Okay, so yesterday, this is like.
Well, hold on, pause. You know, coming up so all the people on Zoom can see you as well.
Yeah, Tammy.
Give it up for Tammy. Yeah.
first time standing for Zoom call.
Yeah, Zoom.
You're right there.
Okay, so yesterday, all this happened. Expectations, people didn't show up, they were supposed to, and it happened 2 days in a row. And I allowed it. So, because Heather's taught me things in the business, I changed things to wait for, okay, I had 2 clients come to get their first 3-day trials. I confirmed with them, I followed up with them, and this was Saturday, and I told him I had my training on Saturday, and we can meet, he had a soccer game, and I said, okay, so he was supposed to come to my house. So I text him and says, what time are you coming? I was checking in, and he said, I'll be there at a certain time. It's like, okay, like 2 hours go by, and we're getting like an hour before he's supposed to be there, and I'm like, I'm confirming you're on your way. I didn't hear from him till like past the time he's supposed to be there. He's, I'm sorry, we stopped for dinner, it's rain late. I apologize. Can we do this tomorrow? And I said, yes. What time? And I says, I will be back from Fit Club by noon. Can you be there? And I said to somebody before this happened, I already had plans that day. I had 2 plans and 2 parties to go to, and I changed them because of this. So instead of having him come later and not changing my plans, so I was disappointed myself for changing my plans.
Yeah.
I was very upset at myself for doing that, because I've taught through Heather not to change your own plans for other people. You stick with what you're going to do, and because my time is valuable. So he didn't show up again. I was very upset at myself again and said, I did it again. This is how my business has gone and how I have failed. So I don't want to fail that way anymore. And that's why I'm here.
Okay.
So in different ways.
Great.
Great.
Well, I hear a bunch of things. So first of all, I see your tears, and
It's nerves too.
it's nerves.
Very
Okay.
nervous.
Well, I see your tears, and what that means to me is a couple of things. So the first one is I'm getting, and this is intuitive and from your story as well, that you were really committed to the person getting great results, and you're really excited for them, for what was possible for them. So there's like a disappointment there,
Yeah.
and an upset, and your desire to serve. I
Mhm.
really hear that. And I also hear, like you said a couple of times, failed.
Mhm.
And so there's like, do you feel like there's a lot of judgment about how you've been doing your business, and you judge yourself as a failure in that. And then this is just another reminder.
And well, I learned to reread my texts before I send them out. And so I was going to text him, my time is valuable, and I was waiting for you, and I had to blah, 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 text. And I was like, read it, and I was like, you are not sending this to this guy. So I deleted it. And then he says, I hope you understand that I had a soccer game, and can we do this another time? So I just text him back, okay, can you call me tomorrow, and I will come to you. Instead of waiting around, I will come to you. We will set up something, because him and his wife want to start. He said he's serious. So I said I will drive to you in the evening when you are off work and meet your family. So that's how, and then he goes, thank you. That sounds great. So we ended it well, and I'm learning to make sure I don't send out texts that it's like,
Well, that's good. There you go. So so there's really, for me, there's 2 conversations here. So the first one is related to what we're talking about here. So what if you were completely unattached, in the sense of, I don't know if this person is going to get on the plan. I don't know if they're going to pick up their products. I know from the past that people often show up, don't show up. This is, this is not a relative of mine. There's no strong relationship yet. So what if you were unattached and you had the mindset of, well, I'm going through all the steps. Let's see how this turns out. Because we know sometimes it turns out one way and sometimes it turns out another way, right? So you can have so that's where the unattachment can come.
Well, and I'm going to look at it from another lens too. So you shared that, or what I heard you share was, I knew on the first day when he didn't show up, I don't want to do it again. So when it happened the second day, you're like, I did it again.
Yes.
Okay. But on the first day, when it happened, what was your relationship to the service? Like your desire to serve won over your desire to take care of you. Does that feel accurate for you? Your desire to serve what his needs were won over your desire to serve what your needs were. So the muscle building exercise is not how do I be better about the disappointment. It's how do I be better about honoring this is my window of time. And he was at a soccer game. He's not going anywhere for the 30 to 45 to an hour and a half that he's at that soccer game. So if you ultimately came to, I'll bring it to you, is there a way that you could have jumped that 24 hours earlier and come to him at his soccer game, which may have been on the way to one of the parties that you were going to because he wasn't going anywhere during that soccer game.
I was going to say it the first day, but he said he was all the way up in Monrovia and he was driving back this way towards me. So it's, and then, but I remember hearing him saying he had a soccer game on Sunday too, but I was like, so I was a little confused. And I believe that better communication and talking on the phone instead of text, this was going on through text.
Great.
And yeah.
Great. And that's not necessarily 100% across the board. Like it's better to talk in person than on text.
Yeah, I mean,
For
it's
some
still going
people
to
it will
happen,
work.
but
Right. But for you, in this circumstance, you feel like had I spoken to him on the phone, I would have been able to better clarify what would have taken care.
Okay. Sorry, I was taking care of that. We seem to have at least one technical issue per session.
In the past.
In the past, yes.
can I sit down?
Do you want,
Are you good?
Well,
are you able
Just-
to repeat this?
yeah, I was just going to say, will you share back what you heard? At least a summary.
A summary of what I heard.
Yeah. And now, let me say that differently. What did you get out of that?
To go at it like a different way. Like, I mean, I could have asked him more questions. I could have did the phone call instead of doing the text back and forth to begin with. I actually did try to call him a few times, and he said he was driving, so he apologized for that too. So I mean, his verbal communication was really good. We communicated well. It was just that I had flashbacks of the old times, and I'm letting this happen again. But the difference is I didn't send out a text saying my time, you know.
So
It's like,
yeah, what's the difference?
it's like his time's probably valuable too, but you know, it's like he doesn't get it. He doesn't know I was waiting for him. He doesn't know I canceled the party. He doesn't know all that.
Right.
And I was, you know, and I wasn't going to go there with him. In the past, I probably would have said, you know, I had a party planned and I was waiting for you. You know, it's just, they don't know this and you're not going to sit there and put that on.
Well, and you could say, hey, it's really important on tomorrow's schedule that if you're not going to make it, I need at least 30 to 40 minute, or if there's any chance you won't, because there's 2 events I'm going too late in order to provide the service for you.
I actually wrote that down, something like similar to that. After this happened, I wrote this down. I was like, this isn't going to happen
Get to tell
again.
people, yeah.
I'm going to do this a different way.
Great.
Awesome.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
And I've got one thing to add to that as while you're sitting. So this, by the way, we're going to go through a couple more people and we're going to talk about like real clear ways to transform. And what if we get to a point where it's like, I just don't see it, right? Like I'm still upset. I'm still disappointed. I still don't see it. Then there's a default. You know what the default is?
Get over it.
Close.
I'm still not there, but
Yes. The default is everything is happening for my highest good,
yeah. If you're trying to find it.
right? Everything happens for my highest good. And
Well,
but
But she found the win.
okay,
I learned a lot out of this because he was my first trial packs.
okay, great.
I have not sold one trial pack. This was my first experience, so I was like I'm going to do this better next time. I'm going to make sure that I follow up better.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to repeat the pattern.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And there probably was some attachment to this is my first trial pack, so I'm really attached to
Yeah.
like having this
Yes.
go, right?
I want to tell Heather, work!
So, but,
It
but-
did. It already worked.
yes, but my
You
point is
already
if everything is happening for the highest good, then there's a lesson. And now I'm looking for what's the lesson. And what if this thing didn't go well so that you learn the lesson so that you're not repeating the things that you did in the past? And you needed to have this one thing, you had to have something trigger the past as a strong
Opportunity.
reminder of the past. So in the new Tammy is not you're not doing it again. So this was like perfect that this happened because now we're not going to go down that path anymore.
Well, and that gets into a little bit of semantics. In spiritual psychology, everything that happens to you is perfect. I mean, from the most horrific things. So when I fell on my bike and I destroyed my elbow, it was the perfect thing to happen. It's up to me to find it. I can either be really pissed off for a long time and live inside of the suffering of it. I can do that. And if I live inside of the suffering, guess what I'm going to learn? I'm going to learn how to help people through their suffering. So even that's for the highest good of me, right? However I choose to interact with the learning opportunity is my highest good. It's just not always the desirable thing because it causes us to stretch. It gets us uncomfortable. It's scratchy. It's hard. It's challenging. It's yucky. But if we always know it was always intended for my highest good, we then get to have the opportunity to find where that can apply. There's no way I could be the kind of coach that I am and be the kind of wife that I am and be the kind of mom that I am, good and bad, great moments and not great moments. There's no way that I could if I didn't have the failures, the limitations, the lack of patience. There just would be no way. I'd have no access to knowing what works and what doesn't. So part of shifting the expectation is really understanding what's working inside of the relationships that I'm building that I want to foster more of, and how did I do that? Not just like, oh, it works good, I don't have to think about it. No. You know, last night we had a team dinner. At the team dinner, I shared with a few people, I apologize for that time that I yelled at you, or I apologize for that time where I was impatient, or I apologize for this or this or that. And they kind of laughed like, ha ha ha, I forgive you. But for me, I was reflecting on what is it in my life that causes the deepest of relationships? And it's being vulnerable. It's saying to people, I'm not always going to be right. And I'm going to sometimes really think that I am. And it's up to me, even if it takes months or a year, to understand, you know what, remember that time? In retrospect, now that I've learned after a year of reflecting and coaching and understanding, that just wasn't the way that I feel that anymore. So I really apologize for you from that time, and here's my commitment to you moving forward. Here's who you can count on me to be. And by the way, and next year it'll probably change again. Now all of a sudden, I've fostered the depth of a relationship with someone who matters to me. You know, if I got upset at someone while I was in my car, I may never have an opportunity to apologize to them. But there are people in my life that year after year I'm in environments with that maybe I want to deepen those relationships. And I want to own some things about me that I previously wanted to be really right about because I wasn't ready to own them. But now that I've learned, I can own, hey, there's your part of it too, and we don't have to address that. But my part of it, I didn't like how I behaved. I didn't like how I responded. I didn't like how I treated me, you, us. And so I apologize for that. And if there's anything, the next step for me is, and if there's anything you need me to know as a result of this apology, now's your time. Because once this is complete, it's complete and in the past for me, and I'm not going to rehash it. So is there anything that you need me to know so that it can be complete? And I really try to do a lot of that with Jan, because in a marriage, if you keep revisiting old stuff over and over and over, it breaks the bond of connection. It breaks the trust between you. I can count on you to be over the past. We're moving forward towards what we're creating now. But if the past keeps coming up in front of you and you keep stepping into this past argument or behavior or upset, you never free yourself or them from it. And that leads to all sorts of disappointment and all sorts of self-criticism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Anthony raised his hand. He wanted to share. Do you want to come up and share?
Yes.
Awesome. Give it up for Anthony.
I'm Anthony. I am interesting case here because I often feel like
Yes,
I'm the
yes, you
opposite.
are. Okay.
I feel like sometimes I'm the opposite. Everybody's talking about these disappointments. Everybody's talking about all these expectations. And I like what Ronnie said a lot, where it's like, if I don't know you that well, say a server or a person that I meet in a gym or something, and you don't show up to something I invite you to, or you deliver the food the wrong way, no problem. Like, my intention is to make sure I keep myself feeling great as much as possible. So like, why would I expect, I don't know much about you, and you haven't shared much about yourself with me. So I like what you said. There is a distinction. But with the people that we do have a relationship with, I think Okay, so what I want to talk about is I have noticed that with people who I have a relationship with, when they express disappointment in me, Anthony, you should have been more on point in this way. If I care about that mentor, if I care about that parent, or if I care about that cousin that shares disappointment about something I did, I will notice myself try to get better. With people that I love so much, like let's say someone I'm mentoring, or like my cousin or someone, if I feel disappointment in them, and I can say like, dude, you should do better. Like you could do this. And I express disappointment. I express my expectation was messed up and they can do better. That makes me feel bad. But I've noticed it would get results. For instance, somebody that I mentor often says like, what did I do wrong? Well, I don't think about that stuff. I mean, I honestly look for opportunities and everything. The biggest thing that could go wrong, I can feel frustration, but I know it's great. I know it's going to be great. So is there value? I'm wondering if there's value in building the skill of expressing disappointment if it actually gets stuff done sometimes. Can you choose?
Okay.
I've seen, last point, at a restaurant,
Yes.
since we're going back to the restaurant.
Yes.
I've seen people get mad at a server, somebody at my table gets mad at the server. My grandpa got mad at a server once, totally shared his expectation about this restaurant. I've never been there. He's Italian. This restaurant is Italian. I've been to many Italian restaurants. What do you think this is? They came back, gave the whole table free food. Now, I think that's not a great way to live, because that's more bad for my grandpa than it is for, okay, we saved money. But I got results done.
I thought he expressed disappointment, which is the same thing you said you do.
No, that's what I don't do. I would never
But you don't express
make someone feel bad because they messed up. I want to learn how to help them create an opportunity like you were saying. I don't like to do that.
Share what you
Okay, well, that's what I thought.
I'm wondering if there's value in that, having that skill.
Having the skill of telling the person what they did wrong.
Okay, first of all, do you have an agenda of what you want to hear right
I'm wondering if there's value. No, I don't. It's a curious question. Because if there is value, if it's powerful to achieve what we want on a big scale, to be able to do that, because we think about big people that tell people off. And I'm like, is that valuable? Is that where I'm headed if I want to make a massive impact?
now? Great.
I'm thinking about a couple different things. You want me to move forward with this?
Yeah,
Or
what I
want
heard
me
you say.
Okay, well, I heard you say quite a few things. Okay, so the first thing I heard you say is that when people are expressing their disappointment in a result, like an unmet expectation, they share it with you, that puts you in action. It can. Okay.
It has.
It has. But you realize that you don't like to do the same for others. Sometimes you do see that it does put people into action, and other times,
And you do it.
and sometimes you do it, and sometimes you don't. Is that accurate?
And you would prefer not unless we give you feedback right now that might prove otherwise.
That might serve you.
Great.
Okay. Well, I mean, the first thing that's coming forward for me, the first thing that I'm hearing is like an attachment to a result and a judgment about the result.
Yes, I would agree.
Okay. So you go ahead.
No,
Want me
you
to
got
keep
it.
going?
Yeah, you got it. You're good. You're good. So you guys are watching. I'm honored. I have an experience of what I'm hearing Anthony say and what I'm hearing him ask, which is not really the question I would answer. So remember how earlier at the very beginning of this, I said sometimes a person will ask a question and like Jan asked that question, and it's like, well, that's not the question that I have an answer for, because that question doesn't seem like if I gave you the answer that it would solve anything or get us somewhere. So I love what he shared, but I wouldn't answer that question because that question gets me in trouble if I answer it and he disagrees, he's not doing anything about it. And if he answers it and agrees and it's exactly what he's already doing, then he'll keep doing that. And I don't want him to just stick in what he knows. I want him to consider lots of different things, okay? So, excuse me. So I'm honoring the process because Jan also is going to have an experience of it that's going to serve Anthony in some way. And I'm excited to see how what Jan experiences serves what is intended for you guys. Because everything that's happening here, you're here for an experience.
Okay. So
Okay.
we're going off in a little bit of a different direction. So you guys are all good with this? This is good? Okay. So did you understand did you hear what I said to her? That there's a judgment about the result.
Yes.
Okay. And so you're judging whether the result is what you wanted or what you didn't want. And that would mean that if the result was what you wanted, it's good. And if it's what you didn't want, it's not good. Well, the first thing is that kind of contradicts the overall feeling or philosophy of that everything is happening together, regardless of what the result looks like. Are you with me so far?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But let's go back to the restaurant scenario.
Well, and understanding what that really means, like understanding no matter what your perception or perspective or philosophy is, there's always something else that might be just as good. But you haven't tried it on, or it just hasn't occurred to you, or because the one that you're using is great, you don't have to consider any others. Do you follow that?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
With one eye closed. Kind of, but we'll keep moving forward.
Okay.
Kind of moving forward. So let's say that so to use one of your examples, I'm someone that you're mentoring. Okay. And so you say, you know, Jan, if you want to get really great results, what you should do is you should do X. Okay. And then you and I meet later that night and we say, we're talking and you say, so did you do X? And I say, I did not. I didn't because I did Y instead, and then I did Z, and I'm really excited about this and that. It kind of created some results, some didn't, and you're disappointed. Are you disappointed because you are like committed to me having an amazing business, and you know that X is gonna serve?
This is where my question lies.
Okay,
For
good.
me, I would say no problem. Like let's create. Like,
Okay.
no, I would never get disappointed in that.
Okay.
So I'm kind of almost a softie, or like just go with the flow.
What
Is there value in being disappointed? And like saying, not in this exact scenario, but in a given scenario, I would normally just go with that flow and be like, okay, let's create. Okay, no problem. Opportunity to learn. That's a win because you experience something and now we can improve.
Okay. So now, so your question, what I just heard you that is there value in being disappointed?
And expressing it.
Okay. Well, if you're disappointed, so what if I did X? So there's all these scenarios. If I did X and it had an amazing result.
Just celebrate.
Right. Because, by the way, you were right.
Yeah.
Okay. If I did X and it had a horrible result.
No problem.
Great, no problem. You did X. Now there's opportunity to learn from it.
Yes.
If I did Y and Z, then we flow, and you can either be disappointed that I didn't or not. And then you create again, and then tomorrow we create the agreement that I'm going to do X tomorrow. And guess what? I do Y and Z.
Yeah. I feel like consistently.
Never going to do
You're not
what
creating
someone
with
tells
me.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, what happens there is you have a history. It creates an unattachment. An unattachment and kind of like what Ronnie said, a lack of expectation. For me, I now know this person is going to do it the way that they want to do it. I'm able to provide my experience, and then they're going to do whatever they want to do, which, by the way, is another Jan rule of life. Everyone's going to do it
They're
their way.
always going to do it their way.
They're going to do it their way. They're never going to do it exactly your way because they're not you.
And they can't.
Right, because they're not you.
Logistically, they just can't.
So you get to provide your information and then sit back and go, I wonder how this is going to turn out.
Now, my experience is that sometimes when someone is always doing whatever they want to do, if you are working with someone who is always excited and eager to go with you, connection, and go against you, disconnection, their way, that it feels good, it feels acknowledging, it feels positive inside of people to have partnership and connection. And for people where it's, I'll give you the feedback and you go and do it your way, I'm maybe possibly less invested in what your outcome is because you want to learn on your accord at your time how you want to do it. So if you want to create bonds with people that potentially cause partnership and connection, then at some point you're going to have to say, hey, I keep giving you these suggestions, you keep doing whatever you want to do, and I've got 3 other people over here where we're all going together and doing these things together because they want to do the way we're doing it. So it's great that you're doing your thing, but I'm just over time not going to have as much time for you.
That is essentially what I try to do. I don't find value in telling that person, look, you're not worth my time anymore. Like, that's really rude to me. But that may make someone go like, well, okay, and make them
But
jump
I wouldn't
up.
use the word worth. Their
You know what I'm
worth
saying
has
though?
nothing
Like,
to
there's
do
a
with
there's a
their time.
positive way to structure every feedback, and I'm good at that.
Yes.
Because I like creating.
But it's
with-
about the come from. It's not about the languaging out, it's about the come from. If the come from is, look, I love that you want to do it your own way. I like to do things my own way some of the time. And some of the time I'm aware that if I try to do it my own way, it may lengthen the timeline, it may distract me, it may pull me in a different direction than the flow. Think of it like this. If you're going to do a Spartan race and a group's going to go together and you want to do it for time, are you wrong for wanting to do it according to your speed and your capability? No. But if you want to foster your team getting across the finish line and you try to go do it for time, there's a disconnect between who you are for the team. And you just have to decide, what role am I playing in what relationship? I would never say to you, tell someone you're disappointed in them to see if you get a rise out of them and cause motivation. Never.
Okay. Awesome.
That's what he wanted.
But what I would say to you is sometimes you're going to have
That's
to
important
do
for me to
what
hear
they
because
do.
we often all see people who say things to get a rise out of people, and it causes motivation. But like, I don't think that's a very good way to live. This is a simple question. I don't know, but it's something that
Well, I think there's a couple of layers that you're just that answer and your excitement about you agreeing with it is not the only part of it. So awesome, high five, we got to the answer to that question. But that question has a couple of layers underneath it that also are important. Do you think that when you share with someone, hey, I'd really love to expect you to be there on time? Because when you're on time, then we can leave and we can do all the things that we have planned in the timeline that we have them planned. And when you come late, although we get as much as we can done, it still changes the timeline. That's still expressing a disappointment, but you're not telling them they're wrong for it. You're just sharing, here's what's possible when you show up this way. And to me, that's honest. There's a vulnerability and an authenticity that if you just say, great, you're doing it your own way, there's not authenticness about that. Because if you really want to see someone thrive and you want to do things in conjunction with them and you want to be a mentor, you want to connect, then if they disregard anything you ever say, inside of you, there's got to be something that says, gosh, I feel less of a connection. There's something inside, like I feel that. So then the question inside is, well, what would cause a deeper connection with that person? Where do we meet and see it that we can cultivate? Like, we love going to movies together and we get there on time and we never show up late and we watch the movie and we have a great discussion afterwards. Like, you got to find the root of that relationship. So I think that the answer to your question is an easy answer, but the depth of the question and what's possible and available out of alleviating disappointment and telling people that you're disappointed in them so as to create something, that's not authentic. But authenticity is, hey, I'm doing this because. I'm telling you to do X because. And whatever you choose is great. And the more we're in alignment, the more I think we'll get done. That's authentic. And I think at the core of all of this, authentic relationship building solves everything. You know, if you are a person that doesn't like to be told what to do and you have the freedom to say, I don't want you to tell me what to do, and they don't take offense to it, that's a beautiful relationship. But there's a lot more people that tell someone openly, hey, don't do that, Crystal. And she's like, you know, like, I'm out. And it's like, I'm out, right? Like, I'm out. But what if Crystal, I could say that to Crystal, and Crystal's like, thank you so much for that perspective. I don't share the same perspective, but I appreciate that that's yours. Now we're reconnected. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, give it up for Anthony. Okay, so I had the expectation
We'd have lots more time.
that we were going to each individually be able to look at a disappointment in our life. We were going to bust through it.
We were all
It was
doing
going to be
that.
extraordinary.
We were doing
And I was attached to the process. I even gave you the whole flow, the step by step, but it didn't happen.
And we're all disappointed.
But I'm not disappointed because I actually came in here very unattached. You know, Monika and I set up that agreement amongst ourselves that this was going to be a workshop and we were going to introduce things. We were going to do things a little differently in terms of how we were dialoguing. And we were,
Co-create. It's
and we
called
were gonna-
co-creation.
and we were going to co-create with everyone here and everyone on Zoom to see what was going to come forward, and that everything, the lessons that you were intended and designed to learn out of this was going to come forward through that. So those are all the chats of when we got logged off.
Okay.
So what I want to do, because I'm aware of the time, is if we've got all these people on Zoom, is there any quick shares that anybody wants to from Zoom land share about what they got out of this?
Zoom in!
Quick being okay, here we go. All right, go Allie.
Quiet over here right now. And this was clarify expectations before getting disappointed in something. So if you clarify what you expect from someone else, there will be less room for disappointment because the expectations the agreement is already set beforehand, versus going in and assuming that you know something about someone or that you assume something's going to happen, but you've never expressed that to that other person.
Absolutely.
So,
Awesome. I can't tell you how much disappointment I felt when I tell people that dodgeball starts at 8:45 and they're parking at 8:45 and then they're waiting in line to pay for the ticket and they get on the court at 9:15 and I'm sad for them because I didn't communicate and tell them in advance and really create an agreement about that with them. So yeah, that is definitely a great way to avoid that. Awesome. I muted you. Sorry, Allie. Okay. Anyone else want to share from Zoomland? Quickly, succinctly. Okay. Anyone here in person? Anything you want to share? Any major takeaways? Yes, Blaine.
Well, something that I've been practicing, I mean, yeah, it's great to set agreements, but we have so much happen in our lives, like hourly, that we constantly have to revisit those agreements and reset goals and co-create like on and on and on throughout our entire relationship, because, you know, like something may happen and it may alter our perception on something, and all of a sudden, like, you just, you know, you collectively combine every relationship or every perception as the same thing, and then this person has not experienced any of that, right? So it's like totally just over communicating everything, letting them how you feel, like this is where I thought we were at, are we still here? Stuff like that. I'm just constantly talking to people about that stuff because, yeah, we have so much happen in our lives and we're busy people and we have a lot of things that happen. So it's super important, and I noticed like tons of results from it. Just people are like really appreciative of actually reaching out and asking, you know, over asking even, like, is this what you meant? And is this how I can still support you?
Yeah.
Well, I would also frame it as that's your opinion, like over, because that's how I communicate.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Like I've practiced so much that for me it's not over what I used to do. It's now how I do it.
Right.
And there are certain people, like you have to be careful when you label it like that, because over communicate could then sound like a burden for someone, versus I communicate more effectively now. I communicate more directly about what's going on for me. I actually share and ask more of the questions that actually get me the answers that I'm looking for. Now I feel empowered to be part of that conversation. If you say, God, everything I do, I have to over-communicate. First of all, I don't want to communicate with you because I don't want to be over-communicated with. I'm already bombarded by 1,000 things. So my misinterpretation of what you meant to say, which is now I make sure that when I'm communicating, the message sent is the message delivered.
More effective for me.
Yeah.
And just to reflect what you just said also, the waiter who got your order wrong hasn't communicated with every other waiter who's gotten your order wrong in the past, and they're not all strategizing together to ruin your life. You know? And they also don't know about what you have next on your schedule. They just don't know. They don't have your day planner. They don't know.
You're like, hi, I'm Jan. Here's my day planner. I have 37 minutes. Can you get the food to me in that time?
They don't know. And so you're right. So Blaine, that's something called collapsing that a lot of people do. And they collapse past events, they collapse past experiences and conversations
Past
and
waiters.
disappointments and past waiters. So awesome. So who is going to have a totally different experience the next time they go to a restaurant?
Not going to restaurants.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So let's say you've already entered into a relationship and there's been some rub on, just might not have agreements or some, discomfort and disappointments. What's the best way to come around and have a conversation now? Wishing you would have had it before. Like, what's the best way to just kind of sit down and say, hey,
Great.
how do we clean this up and move forward?
Do you want me to answer that first? Okay. Well, the first thing is that there's some self-forgiveness for yourself for not having done it before. Because you don't want to bring to the conversation upset with yourself. Sorry, that's it. Okay, you don't want to bring upset with yourself. So do you get what I mean by that? Because clearly, like, there was a reason why you didn't bring it up before. Whatever it was, you were comfortable, whatever it was.
Or you didn't know. You just didn't know. You didn't come to this Motivational Monday before you had the first conversation with the person.
So, I mean, this is just the way I would handle it, is I would have a very honest conversation that is really designed to talk about what's serving our best interests. It's like, you know what? Our relationship is like this. And this is really what I imagine it being like. I think it could be like this and like this, like this. Is that the way that you imagine it could be that way as well? Awesome. So we both have the same vision for this dream type of situation, this dream relationship. When we behave in this way, I don't think it's serving that result. So this is how I think I would prefer to help achieve that result. What's your opinion on that? Or do you have a different suggestion on how we could have that? And that's how I would have the
like
conversation.
really not coming from, and my way's right.
Yeah.
Like, here's what my imaginings of perfection were. Like, Jan and I do parenting differently. And Jan and I have different love languages. And Jan and I get things done at a different speed. So I could either, like I have in much of our relationship in the past, be like angry with him about everything that he does and the way he does it all the time. Or I could say, what's my part of the work and what's my part of the communication that I'm not getting across? And sometimes I'm trying to get the information across, but I'm so emotionally empty or filled or frustrated or whatever that it doesn't come across as positively to him as I'd like it to come. Like, he misses the part of it of, I'm really glad we're in this together. And what he hears is, here's all the ways that you're messing it all up. So my work is, let me make sure that I always start the conversation with, here's how we're in it together. And I'm not going anywhere. So if I'm not going anywhere, what are we going to do about this? Because I can't be the only one that looks for the solution. And the solutions that you've looked for so far and the solutions I've looked for so far are not producing the result we both want. But what we make sure to do is say, well, what's what we both want first? And then we can look at your solutions, my solutions, and what will work. And then we try them, and sometimes both of our solutions don't work. So then we go back to well, do we still want this goal? Okay, maybe we can't find the solution. Hey, Anthony, what do you think your solution is? Crystal, what do you think about? How would you deal with it? Melissa, how would you deal with this? And then we say, okay, I liked what Melissa said. I'm not going to do what Anthony said. I like what Crystal said. Let's blend those two, and now let's try that. And then we come back and say, Melissa and Chris, well, yours didn't work. Anthony, we're going to try yours because we just don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
Then we try Anthony's, it works. And now we say, okay, great. Now we know, here's what our path was to get to that awareness.
Yeah.
But it's being flexible and willing to do the work.
And so just to recap what I had said before, there's two main parts. The first one is coming to the conversation clean.
Mhm.
Like any of the work that you need to do so that you're not bringing upset to it already. Because, you've been in conversations where I'm starting it like this.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. Okay? And then the second thing is to make sure there's alignment. Make sure that there's alignment on this is what we're working towards together. Now it's where we are. What do we both think would work best to serve creating that?
Right. Okay.
That help?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Excellent.
Blaine.
Last thing that just came up for me, I think it's also important to be aware of like where they're at in their life or their day to when you bring it up. Because if they just had a huge win or they're excited about something, to bring up something like that, they're going to come from a totally different space and they're going to receive it differently as well. So I just think like being conscious and aware of like, okay, cool, like where they're at, are they excited? How are they, how's their energy right now? Is this appropriate to bring it up?
Yeah. You
And
definitely.
you also can ask them.
Yeah.
Hey, I'd like to talk to you about something that's important to me that may be a little bit heavier in nature, and I noticed that you're really, really super happy about a bunch of things. Is now a good time, or would you rather me celebrate with you and talk in an hour or 2 or 5?
Yep.
Yeah. But
Sometimes I feel like people are going to not be honest with you and they're just going to say like, oh, is it something like, yeah, tell me.
Because people under now is fear.
right,
Yeah.
but that creates relationship.
Yeah.
When they say that, and then you tell them, what could you ask them after you tell them to qualify whether that was appropriate or not? See, it's still your responsibility to deal with that. That's the problem. Most of us give up at that point. Give up on them. You know that when I'm talking to you, whether it's laughing and silly and tickling you and being funny, or whether it's direct up in your face this far away, it's always coming from wanting you to live the greatest life ever. And sometimes my delivery is impacted because I had a shitty day, and so I just am giving it to you. And that's probably not the best responsible way for me to give people information. But if someone's there and they're asking me for information, I say, you know what, it's just not the right time. And they're like, no, I really need your help. I have to make a decision about that. And if it lands for them in a terrible way, then it's up to me to someday, a year later, apologize to them and say, you know what, I shouldn't have done that. I should have known better. Yes, Lauren?
I just have a question.
Okay.
I was just thinking that obviously having agreements are good between people, but what happens when like you're trying to set agreements and like get rid of the expectations and all that so you're communicating? What if I'm trying to get this so you get it. So what if you can't fix anybody? Like what if you start seeing things that you want to fix in people?
Yes.
Like you love them, but then you're like, I hate this about them or whatever it is. Like you can't fix them and they're never going to change for you. They have to change for themselves.
Yep.
So what happens if are you allowed to give them your agreements and expectations, but is that trying to change them? What if you don't you know what I'm saying? Like,
Well,
is it confusing?
The first thing I'll say is it's a lot easier whenever you give a scenario when you have specific example, because then it depends on who or what or your relationship to the example.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to tell me that in public, but I can answer this question a little better if I know the scenario, okay? But in general, what I hear you asking is, there are certain things about people that we know are their ways of doing things, but it's not serving me in the relationship. And if I want to have a long-term relationship with them or I'm married to them, then I kind of want to get to the bottom of it and have them understand how it impacts me. So you can't come from what they need to do different. You've got to come from how it impacts you. when you come from how it impacts you, you share from a different place. It's not like you need to change the lights, Anthony. And when you don't come to my house and change the lights, I don't want to see you in my house. Okay? Or it's, you know what? I am working late at night. And when the lights can't turn on when I'm trying to work on my computer, I can't get my work done. And so it would be so awesome. You're the best light changer I know. When you come to my house, do you mind working on remembering or allowing me? Can I ask you to change the lights? Would you be open to that?
Oh yeah.
And then if they said no, then it's, okay, what would you be open to? What could we do so that you could serve me in the way that I know I need to be served in order to win? And if you can't come to some agreement, then it's time to brainstorm. Then you got to ask Crystal and Tammy and Anthony and Melissa and see what they say.
Right.
Because sometimes you can't, inside of a relationship with someone with the long history of the way your patterning is, see any other way.
Okay. So he said, she said. Okay.
That's one way.
That's her answer.
That's my experience.
My answer is a little different. I'm curious your thoughts if you disagree. My answer is this. People are the way that they are. And people grow and shift. I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. But if my feeling as a general rule, if you're in a relationship with somebody, you have to accept the way that they are and assume that they're never going to change and be okay with that for the rest of the relationship. And if you're okay with that and not have an expectation of change, then when the change comes, that's great. But you have to accept that that's the way that it's going to be, and you're going to have to be okay with it for the rest of the relationship. Otherwise, you're in the relationship waiting for the change to happen, and that creates expectation and disappointment. Yes.
So accept the way that they are and assume that they're never going to change. But what if that affects you personally and, let's say your child or
It does.
your
It does.
fiance?
You have to plan accordingly.
It does.
Yeah. So what if it's like your mother-in-law? What? And you have to be around them,
Change it.
And you want to make it work, and like you said, over the years, especially.
Well, it's that sentence. It's the and you want to make it work.
Yeah, and
That's an
and
expectation.
You've been trying, that's an expectation.
So,
And you've been trying, that's an expectation.
For years.
Yes.
That's an expectation.
And this is, maybe this is our subject next week or beyond, but.
Mother-in-laws.
So the mother-in-law.
I just know it's because you told her, it's easier to say what it is, because you can just be super broad about it. So.
Yeah. Well, so we both, this is why we have two different, approaches. Lenses. But the bottom line is the mother-in-law is the way the mother-in-law is. The mother-in-law is not going to change. Like she will over time, but you can't control how it's going to happen.
Or how fast, or if it's the way you want her to change.
The only thing that you can control is how you relate to the mother-in-law. How you relate to her and what the expectations are and the agreements that you make.
Like this.
Well, what if you did make an agreement and you sat down and laid it out and said, this is what this is where I see our relationship going.
Yeah.
Are you willing to put in the work or be straightforward with me? And it has been like that. But then, like everyone's saying, people have their off days or they're around certain people and then they change and stuff. So, there's so many factors. It's so complex. So let's say
there's not a factor between you and her. Mm-hmm. There's her and your experience of her.
Explain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? So there's lots of factors, but there's your experience of who you accept her to be or not. Mm-hmm. That's the only factor you're dealing with.
Right.
She's going to do whatever crazy thing she does, say whatever crazy agree with you and not follow through on the agreements, not agree with you and follow through on the agreement. All that can happen for her.
But as long as
it's how you handle it.
My responsibility.
Yeah, and if you can't handle it, then there isn't space for the relationship until you can handle it again.
And by the way, I don't know if you were here in the very beginning. In the beginning or early on, I said, everyone's doing the best. This is what I just choose.
Yeah.
So she's doing the best that she can.
And what she thinks is right for her.
And what she thinks really is right for her. What she thinks is best.
It's right.
Is right.
Is best.
And
for all.
Yeah.
It just, how it works out is it's right for her. Because she's not in your life and your experience and your receiving of it.
Right.
She can only be in hers.
Yeah. And I can only be responsible for my own.
And there's probably a lot of work to be done, that the things that she's doing, you're making it mean things, you know, about you and about her and why she's really doing it and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what, we've got more Mondays for
Yeah,
that.
that's why I didn't want to really say anything, but I just like has it.
Good.
Yeah, it's great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
The other thing I want to say, and I do this in all of my couple counseling, there's you, there's the other person in the relationship, and then there's this third person called the relationship. So if you call your mother-in-law, whatever you'd call her, and she energetically hears it, you never say it rudely to her face, but you feel very clearly, ugh, this again? Energetically, she gets that. There's no buffer because you direct it at her. This is how I feel about you. But if this is how you feel about the relationship with her, there's a buffer in between you. Now she can do whatever she's going to do, and you have to decide, what does the relationship need for me to be part of it? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the relationship becomes a very important part of every relationship. The relationship itself, how you treat it, how you honor it, how you be in it, how you cultivate it, how you foster it, how you understand it, how you ask questions about the relationship. That matters. More than what I think of you is what I think of our relationship. If I'm not loving our relationship, what do I need to do to have our relationship win?
Awesome. Let's wrap up.
Okay.
Okay.
17 hours late.
Yes, so that was longer than usual, but because
you
we
guys,
engaged
thanks
in
for the questions.
conversation,
Yeah, really.
we love that.
It's
So we
awesome.
hope that you got value out of that, and hopefully that was a fun, different structure to everything.
Yeah. Awesome. It's
So
a good workshop.
Awesome.
you like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
So-
you, everybody out in Zoom land.
Yes.
Thank you.
We got it Monday.
Woo! See you right with the what? Pay it forward!
Jen,
Bye, everybody.
when they were doing what